Welcome back to Total Drawing. Today we're going to talk about 4 graphite or pencil shading techniques. We'll explore these 4 techniques on a sphere, and we'll make sure that our light source comes from the top right. So I'll begin in the bottom left of the first sphere, creating a shadow. This first technique is called blending, and when we blend, we shade with different directional strokes and also with pressure changes. So the first set of strokes that I've laid down are pretty dark and they're almost vertical. The second set of strokes change direction. They're more diagonal and a little bit lighter as we work our way towards the light source in the top right. I'll continue to layer strokes, working with lighter pressure as I get towards our light source, changing directions with each layer. Some of these layers may feel disconnected at first, but we'll go back and we'll start working in different directions next to a darker value, blending it into a lighter value. Again, with pressure changes and different directional strokes. You can almost make a scribble stroke next to a darker value to blend it into the lighter value that's adjacent to it. You can darken your sphere with subsequent layers as well, making adjustments. And work your way all the way across your sphere, changing directions and pressure as many times as you need to achieve the contrast that you desire. It's worth noting that only the pencil's tip has touched this sphere. It has not been smudged with a finger or any other tool. The second technique we'll consider is called circling. It's slow and somewhat tedious, but it's guaranteed to ensure a smooth, uniform surface. It's important to note that when you're circling, you're making a round stroke. You're not making open circles, but you're making strokes so small that they're closed circles. As you move across the sphere, these small circles should overlap one another. And in that way, they'll blend together and you won't see the circles. Just like with the first sphere that was blended, the second sphere is also dependent on pressure changes. In fact, all 3 of these spheres, all 3 of the first spheres are dependent on pressure changes as you work your way from the dark towards the light source. Again, the light source for all 4 spheres is going to be from the top right. Circling is best used in small compositions. Given that it takes a lot of time to do, another option may be more suitable for really large graphite or pencil drawings. These 4 techniques will create a slightly different surface and they can be used together in a single artwork. As you can see, I'm closing in on the lightest part of our sphere. We'll call it the highlight, even though it won't be white, it's still going to be the highlight. Now lighten my pressure as I go. Just like with the blended sphere that we began with, we can go back and add layers of circling to build up the level of value, the level of contrast between the darkest areas and the lightest areas. With both of these first 2 techniques, adding layers will ensure a smoother surface. The layers of strokes build up on one another, and in that way they cancel each other out. Circling takes quite a bit longer than blending, but the results are very satisfying to look at. Our next technique is called smudging, and it's a lot faster. With smudging, you still need to start with strokes that are tight strokes that do not have white spaces or white gaps between them. We are going to blend these strokes out or smudge them out with a different tool, destroying the strokes altogether. So I'll look for 3 values to start: light, medium, and dark. And then I'll use a tool called a stump. You could also use a rolled up paper towel or a piece of drawing paper folded into a paper football and use those corners. And you want to make strokes with your blending or your smudging tool perpendicular to the strokes that you use to lay your graphite down. This will smudge or blend or melt all of these strokes together. It's worth noting that when you smudge, the values that you end up with will be darker than the values that you originally laid down with graphite before smudging. Smudging forces graphite down into the microscopic white speckles of your page and reduces the amount of white space that shows through, thus making the values look darker. Our last technique is called cross-contour shading. Unlike the first 3 techniques where we worked to smooth out or to reduce the visibility of our strokes, the 4th technique is dependent on the strokes remaining visible. Cross-contour shading is used to help show the roundness or 3-dimensionality of a form on a flat surface. Notice how these strokes bend and curve away from the center, not different from how latitude looks on a globe. With cross-contour shading, not only does the change from light to dark show that we're creating a form or a sphere out of a circle, but the strokes themselves reveal the sphere. So there's 2 ways in this case to show that this is a round 3-dimensional object. Now as I build up layers of strokes, they do become less obvious, but they're not going to go away. We're still going to see them at least more than the first 3 spheres. So to review, we worked on blending with pressure changes and directional changes, circling with very, very small circular strokes, smudging that required a second tool, a stump or a homemade stump made of rolled paper, and also cross-contour shading. Practice all 4 of these strokes and decide which one works best for you.